Hello, sister. I am so glad you're here today. And I'm curious if this picture resonates with you. You have been doing the work. You have even cut contact from this person that you don't want to be talking with anymore. You're showing up, you're doing the healing, you're on the journey. And then, out of nowhere, he's just there in your head again from nowhere. And the frustration might set in like, why can't I make this stop? Am I not healing fast enough? Am I not doing the right things? Is there something wrong with me? So today, I want to answer that question for you with some science, not shame. Because what's happening in your brain right now is not a story that anything is broken or failing. It's actually evidence that you are a human being created exactly how God intended. And once you understand that, then you can actually do something about it. Do you ever find yourself Googling, how do I stop thinking about him? Or have you ever started your day determined to keep no contact, only to feel pulled right back into the same patterns and shame? Welcome to Intimacy After Infidelity. You're not crazy for feeling this way. I'm Christina Joy, and I've been exactly where you are. I know what it feels like to be overwhelmed by shame and wonder if dignity and peace are actually possible for you. I tried to fix myself by trying harder and committing to more self-control, but what I actually needed was healing from Jesus, who met me in the middle of it all. And that's what this podcast is here to help you do too. In this space, we heal the soul, heart, mind, and body, and we talk about the real things like longing, grief, shame, and confusion. So take a deep breath, friend. You are safe here. Hey girl, before we jump into the teaching today, I want to spend a minute just encouraging you and letting you know I see you. Because I know that one of the hardest parts of still thinking about this guy, even after you have chosen differently, one of the hardest parts is the loneliness of it all. There's potentially no one that you can call at 10 o'clock at night to say, I just can't get him out of my head and I don't know what's wrong with me. There's probably no safe place that you feel you can bring that. And so you probably carry it alone. And believe me, I know that carrying it alone makes everything louder and harder. And so I want to encourage you, number one, that I see you in that. Nothing is wrong with you. But number two, I want you to know I'm building a room for that moment, for that emotion. It's the Encounter Retreat that's happening September 25th through 27th in Panama City Beach, Florida. 10 women, a luxurious beach house where I get to spoil you. I'm so excited. It's an all-inclusive weekend where you get to completely step out of your environment, out of the triggers, out of the noise, and into the presence of God with women who get it. It's not a room full of workbooks and lectures. It's a room full of safety, of presence, and women who won't flinch when you tell them honestly how you're feeling. Spots are already being claimed, so friend, email me the word retreat, and let's just have an honest conversation about whether this room is the right spot for you. My email will be in the show notes. I'm excited to talk with you. All right, so jumping in today, I want to start by sharing something I said to myself 100 times when I was beginning no contact. And it's also something I've heard women say to me in DMs and coaching calls frequently. They say something like, why can I not get him out of my head? I am intentionally choosing different. I'm walking the other way. Why is he still in my head? Why can't I make this stop? I remember the feeling of that. It wasn't exactly shame. I'm sure shame was mixed up in there, but I felt more of this relentless pressure, like my healing wasn't working. I was doing the things that I thought were best. Of course, I was in my Bible, I was praying, I was in counseling, I was journaling. I was doing the things. And so I thought, well, if I'm doing the things and this is still happening, I'm still once in a while overcome with, these thoughts of him. Did I miss a step? Like, did I miss something in the checklist, or did I miss a signpost on my journey? Like, everyone else must be able to do this. And again, the temptation is to ask, what's wrong with me? And for me, everywhere I drove around my city held a memory of him. And certain times of the day felt like his time. He'd pop into my mind and I'd remember when we used to talk. Or sometimes I would go for a walk on a local trail. Or, if a song came on or there was a specific hour of the evening, suddenly he just consumed my mind again. And it was like he was running in the background of my mind like a program that I couldn't close. There was no exit button there. So I want to talk about that if you resonate with those feelings. And I want to tell you what is actually happening, because in no way is it a failure. It's actually neuroscience and what's going on in your brain. So did you know that your brain has a system called the default mode network, or DMN? It's a network of brain regions that activates not when you're focused on a task, but actually when you're not focused on something. When maybe you're driving a familiar route, you're driving, let's say you're going from work to home, and all of a sudden you pull in your driveway and you think, how did I get here? I don't actually remember driving home. Or maybe when you're in the shower, or maybe when you're lying in bed right before you go to sleep. These are times when your mind has nothing urgent. You're kind of running on autopilot. Research published in peer-reviewed neuroscience journals consistently shows that the default mode network deactivates when attention is directed to the external world and toward tasks that demand your attention and demand your thinking. However, this default mode network becomes prominent during periods of rest and rumination. Those thoughts that just keep flooding you. In other words, the moment you stop being busy, your brain goes looking for something to think about. And it goes looking for whatever has the strongest emotional charge. For you right now, that might be him. This is why you can be completely fine all day at work. You can be showing up as mom, you're present with your kids, you're completely okay. And the moment you sit down or get in the car alone or try to fall asleep, boom, that's when he enters your thoughts again. Your brain is not betraying you. Researchers have found that self-referential thinking in this DMN becomes problematic when it shifts from adaptive reflection to maladaptive rumination. So here's what I'm saying. Your DMN is doing what it's designed to do. It's going to process emotionally significant material during downtime. The problem is that most emotionally significant material in your system right now is this relationship that you are trying to end and walk away from. So no wonder when everything gets quiet, when you're alone for 5 minutes, no wonder it comes flooding back into your brain. It's not a self-control problem. And again, nothing is broken. There's no failure. Your brain is doing what God designed it to do. So practically, the more unstructured time you have, the louder the thoughts will be. It's not a spiritual problem. It's not a healing failure. Your brain can be worked with. You do not have to be stuck here forever. Now, Here's a piece that I think will be really relieving and also frustrating at the same time. So get ready to hold both relief and frustration together. When you cut contact, when you make the decision to walk away, your brain does not immediately say, "Great choice, good job, okay, let's move on." Instead, your brain does the opposite. So I'm going to talk for a second about attachment. Maybe you've heard of attachment theory. Okay, so researchers call this protest behavior. It's a concept rooted in John Bowlby's attachment theory, and it describes what happens when the brain perceives that suddenly an attachment figure is unavailable. So after a breakup, the attachment system gets highly activated, and you might feel things like craving, protest, despair, or even retreat, like you want to hide in isolation. This is biology and learning. This is not you being weak. Like, why do I still feel attached to him? It's okay. Here's how this works. Protest behaviors show up when part of your brain that's called the amygdala, when it registers a relational threat. Remember, like if you suddenly realize somebody you're attached to is gone or leaving. And so your attachment system overrides rational thinking. The amygdala activates the fight or flight response. Maybe you've heard me talk about these: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all these F words. And so your brain is suddenly in this threat mode because it wants to force a reconnection, because it doesn't feel safe in the lack of connection. Okay, in plain language, your brain interprets no contact as a real threat. And the brain's job is to restore connection when connection feels lost. It wants to save you from this thing that feels like a threat. And so, of course, it ramps up the longing for this person. Your brain feeds you more thoughts, and it makes him in this relationship feel more significant, even though you're trying to tell yourself, "I'm cutting contact and I'm walking away." There's a part of your brain that says, "No, no, 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 that is not safe." Your brain is literally trying to motivate you to reach back out because it thinks that that's what you need to be safe. A 2013 study by Helen Fisher at Rutgers University scanned the brains of people going through romantic separation. And in the study, it found activity in the same regions of your brain as addiction and relapse. Things like intense longing, anxiety, and even physical pain from the lack of endorphins. So, if your thoughts have gotten louder and more intense since you have cut contact, it is not a sign that you made the wrong decision. That is your attachment system doing exactly what God designed it to do. And knowing this information changes everything about how you respond to it. Okay, so here's the framework that I want to give you in connection with all of this. Let's bring it all together. The moment that the thought arrives in your brain, instead of, "Why can't I stop this? What's wrong with me?" I want you to pause as soon as you realize that you've had that thought. And I want to invite you to get genuinely curious. Ask yourself this question instead: what does this thought tell me about what I need right now? There is no judgment. It is all curiosity. Oh, that's interesting. I just had this thought about missing him. What is my brain and my body? What are they trying to tell me I need? Because here is what I learned after sitting with this long enough in my own healing. The thought that I was having was almost never really about him as a person. It was about something I needed that his relationship used to provide. And once I identified the need, I could meet it in a healthy way. I could meet it with a source that didn't require me to betray myself. For example, for me, often my need was around loneliness or connection or companionship. If I was being honest, I really missed my best friend. And sometimes I was missing adventure, a life that felt more alive than just the mundane rhythm of wife and mom and the job. Sometimes I had the need to feel seen. And again, not by him specifically, just I needed to feel seen. And going to him was the only thing that I knew, and I had done it 100 times, so that became the pattern. Sometimes I just needed to feel known and like I mattered to someone in a real way. So the desire was not about him specifically. It was almost always about what I needed and how that relationship used to meet that need. All right, let me give you a couple concrete examples of what this curiosity can uncover. Let's dive deeper into these needs. So, one example is, like I mentioned, loneliness. So, the thought arrives at 9 p.m. after kids are in bed and the house is quiet. And so you get curious. And underneath the thought, you realize, I'm lonely right now. I want someone to talk to who actually knows me. And so the need is connection. The aligned action, the healthy, safe action would be to text a safe friend, to spend some real time with God, your Father. You could also name the loneliness out loud instead of letting it sit there in silence and trying to sweep it under the rug. Okay, here's another example. Maybe you realize that you're feeling unseen. And so this time the thought arrives after a day where you felt invisible. You were lost in tasks and roles and responsibilities with no one asking you how you actually are. And so underneath that thought is the need, I want to matter to someone. I just want to be noticed. So the need is to be known. Okay, so a better action here is to bring that need to God first. God, I feel unseen today. I need you to remind me the truth of how I am known and loved. And then again, can you communicate that need to a safe friend? All right, one more example here. Maybe it's just boredom and kind of flatness. So maybe this time the thought arrives in a moment where life feels gray and mundane and routine. And so you realize the need is, I want to feel alive. I want something that feels like more than this. And so what you're really saying is, I need aliveness or maybe adventure. You know, a few episodes ago, we talked about this idea of expansive joy, life, and vitality. So here, a better action is deliberately choosing something that creates that feeling. Go on a walk somewhere new. Go on a run if you have extra energy to get out. Start a creative project. Anything that brings novelty and energy into your body. So in every case that I just gave you, the thought is not the enemy. The thought is just a signal. It's like the light on the dashboard of your car that just says, hey, can you just stop and pop open the hood for a second? There's just something you need to see here. And so when you treat this thought of him as information, instead of creating a story about how you failed at something, then the thought loses its power over you. All right, let me circle back for a second to this default mode network, because knowing about it also gives you a practical strategy. If the thoughts are loudest in this downtime, unstructured time, then one of your most powerful tools is intentional structure for those moments. Now, hear me very clearly. I'm not saying that you need to stay so busy you can't think. Well, Christina said, I have to have structure, so suddenly my calendar is booked way too full. Okay, no, that's not what I'm saying. That would be avoidance, and avoidance delays healing. But this is about choosing what your mind gets to do in those quiet moments rather than leaving it to wander into, the habits that are already formed. So a few things that helped me and that I've watched help the women that I coach. First, name what you're walking into. Before you get into the car alone, before you go for a walk, before you lay down to sleep, acknowledge that that part of your brain is about to activate. And then give it something to think about. Maybe it's a verse. Maybe it's a phrase from a verse. Maybe it's a question for God or a specific gratitude. What were you thankful for today? So you're not suppressing the thought. You're not judging yourself and getting upset with yourself for having the thought. But because you know that these thoughts creep in the quiet moments, now you're being proactive. You are redirecting this part of your brain before it even has a chance to fire. And you're being intentional to fill your brain with good things. All right, second idea. When the thought arrives, anyway, practice a 3-second pause. Don't act, don't spiral, don't shame. Just pause. And then again, ask yourself the question, what do I actually need right now? But that pause in between the thought and what you do next, that pause is magic. So sit in there for 3 seconds. All right, last thing, bring it to God in real time, not in a performed, scripted prayer. Bring God the honest version. God, he's in my head again, and I'm frustrated, and I don't want to white knuckle this anymore. God, what do I need right now? And so let that thought become a prayer instead of a spiral. Now, over time, because I want to be honest that this does take some time, over time, these pathways that are in your brain start to lose their strength. Every time you catch the thought and you redirect it without acting on it, you are literally building a new path in your brain. And neuroscience research shows that dopamine levels normalize after separation. The pull decreases as that specific path stops getting reinforced. So I'm just letting you know the thought doesn't disappear overnight, but as you are consistent with redirecting with grace and with love and compassion and curiosity and patience, then the thoughts do get quieter and quieter. And one day you wake up and you realize it's been a week since you've even thought about him. Friend, that is healing. And that is happening even when it doesn't feel like it. So, I want you to try this one thing this week. Next time that thought of him shows up suddenly out of the blue, I just want you to pause and ask, what do you need right now? And maybe even write down whatever comes up. Or if you want to send me a quick email and say, hey, heard your podcast episode. Here's the thought that's coming up for me. What do I do? Friend, I would love to send you an email response and give you some of these practical tools. Have you tried this? Can I pray for you? Can I encourage you in any kind of way? So if you would love to go deeper on this, if you want a space where we work through these attachment patterns and the needs and the thoughts, friend, send me an email. I read every message and I personally reply to every message, and I would love to hear what's coming up for you today. Can I pray for you? God, would you meet my sister in her quiet moments, in the car, in the house, just in the silence that feels so loud? Would you remind her that having a thought of this guy, it's not a failure. You are already in the room with her, and you are giving her the awareness and the strength to choose differently. Father, would you help her learn and practice leading her mind back to you? Thank you for loving us. Thank you for welcoming us home. In Jesus' name, amen.